So actually, I'm going to give you that opportunity to end up. Oh, you want to ask me a question?
Well, yeah. So are we done?
One. I'm done. And I was hoping we'd be done too.
No. So tell me, well, the first obvious question is, why did you take this job?
Because you drive a hard bargain. Why did I take this job? Because specific incidents. Last year when I was working with SID, we thought, let's ask Twaweza, who talk about their Sauti za Wananchi platform, to ask Tanzanians about things that we are also interested in. Mm-hmm. What do they think about the future? Are they optimistic? And what do they think about regional integration? So we quickly cobbled some questionnaires. We sent them by email, and they said, okay, fine, sign here, sign there, etc. And so we went around the country to ask our own, have our own dialogues. And sometime in, I think, July or August, came back this draft brief. And I was just blown away by a couple of things. One, that was, first of all, done quickly, as promised. Mm-hmm. Two, that it was such high quality research. And three, that the stories were counterintuitive and, really challenged the narrative of a hopeless set of Tanzanians or Tanzanians who do not want regional integration. I said, this is the kind of place I like to be involved with, because they tickle my fancy of really trying to always look for the unexpected and the surprising. So I thought, this is really cool. And then you sent me an email saying, imagine being the head of such an organization with such brilliant people. And I dismissed it. But I didn't imagine it, But I think but I only knew a tiny little piece of Twaweza, that and a little bit of work that I'd done looking at, what are the newspapers saying and how are they trying to detect how citizens are responding to the challenges and the opportunities that are available. So it was very slight, very shallow understanding of what Twaweza was doing. So, but when I got to understand it a little bit more and reading some of the materials, I learned it more deeply. I thought, this is fascinating, but it was also terrifying. When I realized how big and complex and ambitious it was, I thought, this is not for me. So I backed a little bit. But then a few people called me also and they said, Aidan, I think you should think about this. But I think what turned it was my wife. Who said, Aidan, if you don't even write in and express your interest, this will be the second time you're turning down this opportunity to be heading an organization. I said, really? When was the first time? I said, well, remember when your previous boss was leaving the bank and they said, would you? And you said, no, this would be the second time. So I thought, okay, let me throw my hat into the ring, and here we are. Yeah.
That is cool. So I hope, Glory, you take note. It's the wives you need to speak to and the husbands in terms of the recruitment. So can we take a couple more? So you are the new kid on the block, and people are trying to figure you out. So help them out. What makes you tick? What makes you tick, and then what are your pet peeves?
My pet peeves. Yeah. Okay. What makes me tick is an insatiable curiosity. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just like to find things out and new, interesting, and surprising things. And I think Twaweza is built around that idea of being careful and thoughtful around finding out, asking interesting questions and finding out about them. I mean, I like to read things as varied as economic history and the ascent of money to The Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking, to try and understand, theoretical physics. And I'm just curious about these sorts of things. So I think Twaweza allows me to exercise that innate curiosity and have fun doing it, and hopefully, keep life, life and limb together at the same time. My pet peeve, I think the biggest one is a sense of almost, people can be cynical and be really proud of their cynicism, and they don't want even to contemplate an improvement or an ability for their own action or their own questioning of things to improve things, to shed a new light on a particular situation. I find that to be at once, sort of arrogant and self-defeating. It'll never work just because it'll never work. So I find that.
So you can't stand those cynics.
I don't like those cynics. So I like to engage them, with whatever information I have, or weave a good story to say, this is possible.
Yeah. So I have one last. I could go on, but you told me we need to keep it short. So I have one last question for you, Aidan. You mentioned earlier this morning that the first thing we did together when you started the Twaweza journey is we went to Uganda, and we met with Goretti and her team, and we talked about things. They were trying to check you out and get to know you, and being nice to me, saying goodbye. And in the last thing you said, I forget what the question was. Maybe Goretti will remember. But you talked about love, and you pulled out your phone and you had taken some notes from what the pastor had said
that morning
about love. You're the executive director of Twaweza, trying to make an impression on your staff, and you talk about love. It was a bit so.
Explain yourself.
Yeah, can you do? I mean, you already hired now. The contract has been signed, but could you explain yourself a little bit?
I can. And I asked this question of the group in Kenya. I said, why are you doing this work? Because we want children to learn. Why? What do you care if children don't learn? Well, it's not good for them, etc., etc. And I was trying to peel that onion as to what is at the core, at the essence of why people like that would work for an organization like this. And for me, it is summed up in love. Love is a tough thing. Love is not just a sentiment; it is also a decision and an action. So when the pastor at the church I was at that morning before we met and flew over to Uganda was actually talking about love being an action, and love being your commitment to make sure that everybody around you achieves the best that they can do, a commitment to being accountable to the people around you, a commitment to also push them, beyond their own boundaries, a commitment to integrity and responsibility. And I thought all of those things are embedded and embodied by the people who work in Twaweza. For me, at those moments, I realized that this organization is not just the sum of its parts or its programming or even the people who work in it, but the energy and the magic stuff that comes together when people with a sense of mission come together to work on really tough problems and do it carefully and with a passion behind it. Then you get an expression, I think, for me, of really human love for the person who may not see you, may not see, but that what you're doing is the manifestation and expression of that deepest of human emotions. So that's why I thought it was important.
Join Twaweza for love.